It's an endless repetition. The screams, the drills, the constant fear and pure agony that reek from every wall and ceiling. By now, I'm used to it. It's my job. As long as I'm getting my pay, why should I care what happens to these pathetic psychos in this hellhole? I scan the room, as I usually do before fully stepping foot into any open space in the asylum. Nurse Mary's watchful eye spots me from the other side of the room.
Dr. Richard requests that you bring in the next patient.
I simply nod to her, watching her back as she walked away to return back to her prior task. And after I just left him with one, this bastard is certainly quick to finish roughing up his toys. On the outside, the asylum seems like a somewhat civil place. Yet, it is anything but that. When the psychos come in, they most definitely don't come out. Come with me, kid. The patient following me. A young boy. He's quiet. Almost as if he knew what was to come. His breathing was becoming irregular. Stop squirming and yelling, kid. You're only making this worse for yourself. The kid finally quieted. We walked down the long, dark hallway. When I had first started working at the asylum, never had I thought it would be as dark and twisted as it is. Dr. Richard smiled, devilishly. Another thing I saw every day. Patient after patient, he'd smile. I had just moved out from my parents' house. I was searching for a job, anything to pay the bills. The asylum was the closest to my new place, and with the highest pay. Yet, that wasn't the only reason I wanted to work at Lightwood Asylum. My baby brother was only 5 when he was diagnosed with Capris delusion. Countless and countless of times he had seen people turn into visions of his own, self-thinking that a duplicate of himself was out to murder him. The year after that, just after his 6th birthday, my parents decided to hand him over to the asylum. Yet, that wasn't the only reason I wanted to work at Lightwood Asylum. My baby brother was only 5 when he was diagnosed with Capris delusion. Countless and countless of times he had seen people turn into visions of his own self, thinking that they were out to murder him. The year after that, just after his 6th birthday, my parents decided to hand him over to the asylum. I didn't expect the job to be as serious as it was. They're just some clowns in a circus. How bad could it be? Besides, I wanted to see my brother. It was over 10 years. As nice as the orientation video was, showing the guards seemingly acquaintances, if not friends, it most definitely was not an accurate representation of what was behind the walls of Lightwood Asylum. On my first day, I had immediately searched for my brother. My brother's name is Jackson. Have you seen him? He became a patient about 10 years ago.
Try room 203. That's where I heard he was placed last.
I needed to see him. What did he look like? Did he still have that dorky smile he gave me every morning? What had changed? When I saw my brother, he looked like anything but the little boy I remembered. He sat on his bed, quiet. His eyes seemed empty, almost as if there were no being inside him. Jackson? Jackson? Is that you? Jackson? That was not my little brother. Who that was, I don't know. He remained silent, unmoving. I reached out to him, hugging him tightly. What did they do to him? After a while, I left the room. I couldn't handle the sight anymore. The most I could do was to find out how my little brother ended up like this. I remember coming across the dark, endless hallway of death. At the time, I had no clearance for it, but I could hear the shuffling of feet. And faintly, ever so faintly, I could see a figure. It was that of Dr. Richard. His eyes wide and unblinking, and that smile, that sinister smile that seemed as if he himself had been possessed by something unholy. At the time, you would have found me terrified, shaking and unsure of the new decision I had made for myself. Yet, I had knew that now that I had seen him, there was no turning back. I had tried to quit the day after. It did not go as planned. I wanted to take Jackson, leave this place, escape with him in an attempt to care for him myself. Yet, word gotten out about my encounter with Dr. Richard. They threatened to kill my brother. After a while, I no longer feared those of the darkness. The me of the past would have cared about the events that occurred in the asylum. Yet, the me I knew then does not exist anymore. It's not like I'm the one being harmed here, so why should it matter to me? The first time I had properly spoken to Dr. Richard was 3 years after I had first seen him in the black abyss of death. I was instructed to bring him a patient, one that seemed about 19 years old.
My next lovely patient. No, please!
Dr. Richard grabbed the boy's arm, injecting a thick, clear liquid through a syringe into his arm, knocking the patient out cold.
Humans are quite ridiculous, aren't they? Such complicated beings. Yet so magnificent.
God, he was mad. He picked up the patient's body, pulling him into the operating table, and I had simply stood and watched.
Humans have created and destroyed countless times with their own hands, creating the greatest of structures and the bloodiest of wars, going as far as to kill their own kind to reassert their strength and dominance over each other. It's fantastic. And these are the most magnificent of them all. Some of them common, some rare. My own shelf of creatures to experiment upon.
He caressed the face of the young boy. I couldn't even imagine what was going through the mind of the doctor during that time. Now, another 4 years later, I still remain at the asylum. It's crazy how once you've seen everything, you become immune to the chaos and violence.
Thank you for bringing me my next patient.
The devil grin on the doctor's face did not cease to vanish, and the whimpering boy's eyes widened as Richard waved me off. As soon as I left, I got word to bring a newer patient over to the recreation room. At this point in the day, going back and forth across the asylum is so damn tiring. There was Lorraine, a young girl diagnosed with schizophrenia, sitting on the floor. It seemed as if she was having a conversation with someone. Not new. I've seen it so often. The recreation room is down the hall to the right. You have 3 hours.
All right. When will I get to see my family?
It's almost too sweet. How this girl thinks her family's coming back for her. Eventually. Have fun, kid. It's the only time out of your cell you get.
Okay. Thank you.
I slowly followed after the girl. Although she seemed harmless, I couldn't help but feel something. An aura, a force of power of some sort. It was almost suffocating. I haven't felt this feeling with a patient, even with the asylum in general, in years. When Lorraine first arrived, I couldn't help but feel the chills run down my spine. The day proceeded as normal. I made my rounds, I brought patients to the doctors, heard every scream and cry, the normal things at Lightwood Asylum. Yet, I didn't comprehend that things were going to change the day after. I wasn't expecting the day to go as planned. Even that morning, I'd woken up somehow with the tabletop mirror of mine shattered on the floor. That was 7 years of bad luck right there. The recreation room was bustling more than ever today. That's a first. More patients were out and about than I'm used to. I spot Nurse Mary from across the room. She beckons me over.
There were some new patients who had an appointment with Dr. Richard last night. It is requested that you check on them and bring them to the recreation room.
She handed me a sheet of paper with a list of names on it. Amanda, Julie, Stephen, Jackson, Lorraine. A chill went down my spine at the sight of my brother's own name. I see him whenever I can. He's the only person I give a shit about in this place. It sounds heartless, selfish, and crazy that I would even let them near my brother. But it was either this or his life. Getting to at least see him, even like this, I was actually a little grateful. I decided to go ahead and get my brother first. What I didn't expect to see was him in tears. Yet he didn't seem like he was crying. His tears were frozen, sliding down his face while his eyes were wide. Come on, Jackson. Jackson was at least 18 now. Yet he still acted like the first time I had seen him in the asylum. We're going to the recreation room, okay? He didn't respond. He simply walked. And I could have sworn I'd seen something near his feet as he had done so. A trail, cold, ice of some sort. Yet, I rubbed my eyes, seeing what I thought of to be ice disappear. Jackson continued, even almost leaving me behind. He knew what to do. You got 3 hours, kid. Make the most of it. This is how it works. If you're not my brother, don't expect the special treatment. And especially, don't expect to get on my good side.
Where's Ben?
Who?
The blonde kid who shares a cell with me.
Who the hell is she talking about? If there was a kid named Ben, I would have met him. You don't share a cell with anyone, kid. Go on.
You saw him yesterday.
Go on. Get a move on. This girl is just as crazy as I thought. I could still feel her dark aura. God, I need her to just be out of my sight. The rest of the day was going smoothly. Retrieve the patients, hand them to the doctors. Retrieve the patients, hand them to the doctors. I thought that perhaps my signs from this morning meant nothing, but I didn't notice that Lorraine had wandered off from the recreation room. From across the room, I watched Jackson. He was staring at a blank wall. When he does this, I imagine that he's watching his favorite cartoon. A smile on his face as he kicks his feet in joy. But I knew that wasn't reality. A while later, another nurse ran up to me.
Dr. Richard has requested that Lorraine sees him immediately.
I scanned the room for the little brat, but she was nowhere to be found. She couldn't have gone back to her room, so she had to have gone down the endless dark hallway. Perfect. That's one less step for me to do. When I approached Lorraine in the hallway, I could sense a form of panic in her movements. Come here, you little shit. Dr. Richard wants you.
No! No!
I'm getting tired of this. Don't make me drag you by the ankle, you little shit. The little girl kept mumbling to herself. Now, I'll admit, goosebumps appeared onto my skin. Her voice, the way she looked. I almost pulled away. But I have a job to do. She could at least be grateful she isn't destroyed like my brother is. It's people like Lorraine who need to be here, not my little brother. I can see why your parents let the fuck up like you here. Lorraine's scream was ear-splitting, causing a ring to echo in my ears. I shut my eyes tightly. I could almost feel as if the blood were dripping from my ears. Now, I had realized that I made a mistake. Before I could react any further, I screamed, my vision going black. I felt my blood dripping down my face. However, I could no longer see. I then felt my throat burn as she ripped it out with her bare hands. I drowned in my own blood, nearly all of my senses gone as I reached out to find Lorraine's figure in the dark. I could hear the screams as Lorraine moved forward, destroying everything and everyone in her path. A monster. My hands came up to my throat, only to run into bare flesh. The wet, bloody feeling was left on my hands, the pain coursing through my body. In my final moments, I could only think of one thing. My brother. My poor little brother, who was left not just once, but now once more. I realize now that I should have done more. Fuck! Why did I have to conform to this? I could have saved my brother. Yet here I am, going toward the only real light that was the way out of the dark. And even as I crawled, clawing at the floor and gurgling Jackson's name, I knew it was too late. I'm sorry, Jackson. I'm sorry I wasn't a good brother. I'm sorry I was going to leave you here. I haven't cried in years, yet the blood rolling down my cheeks was enough. All of the emotions that had built inside of me had finally released, pouring out. Pain, anger, sadness, love for the only person who I wanted to stay in my life. It felt like a slow and painful death, but in reality, it was only minutes until I felt my body grow numb. My fingers no longer moving, my body now coming to a halt.
Hey kid, are you okay? Did you come from that asylum over there? What's your name tag say? Jackson? Do you know what happened in there? Don't worry, honey, we'll get you to...